in 2022, The Black Phone was one of my favorite movies of that year, and this weekend we get the sequel. Can it live up to the original? Let's talk about it. While I'm talking, be sure to join me down below in the comment section. Let me know, what did you think about Black Phone 2? And give me that point of reference. What did you think about The Black Phone? Now, I was able to see this movie at its world premiere at Fantastic Fest last month. So it was one of my most anticipated films of the entire festival. Such an energetic place to see a movie that you're very excited to see. And afterwards, I was able to talk about the movie with a bunch of my creator friends. So at the end of this video, I will have the reactions of a bunch of other people to the film. With all that said, let's get started. As I mentioned earlier, I was a massive fan of The Black Phone, but for that exact reason, I was very nervous about them making a sequel. That's such a self-contained film that ties up all the loose ends by the time the credits start to roll, so it wasn't obvious to me how you could make a sequel to that film. For me, Black Phone 2 was a downgrade from the original Black Phone. That doesn't mean it's a bad movie. It doesn't mean there aren't some very cool sequences in it. That doesn't mean it's executed poorly in any way. And it doesn't mean that there aren't emotionally resonant arcs within the film. It has all of those things. But there were certain things I just loved about how tight and focused the original Black Phone was. And in order to make a sequel out of a story that's already closed off, it kind of has to take all the peripherals, all the side things that kind of added the spice to it, and make those the focus, and it doubles down on all of those elements, in which case you get this bigger story with a larger canvas to paint on. But for me, making it a big lore franchise rather than a tight story diminished the overall effectiveness of the film. Now, to be very clear, coming out of the theater, most people really loved it. And a lot of people said they liked it more than the original one because it is this bigger film. But there's also a number of people just like me that said, hey, it wasn't poorly done, but it just lacked what I really enjoyed about the original. So of course, the supernatural was a key element of the original film, and this movie just kind of doubles and triples down on that side of the story in both different directions. If you've seen the trailers, obviously the grabber is back, and without wanting to say too much, it definitely takes him in kind of a Freddy Krueger Nightmare on Elm Street direction with his character. So really doubles down on the evil side of the supernatural, but it also takes these plot threads about these siblings having these powers to connect with the dead, and likewise doubles down on that to kind of create this grander lore and mythology surrounding how all of this works, how long it's been taking place, and what will these kids do with these powers that they have? What links will they go to try and resolve tensions and mysteries in the universe? So right there, I think, is kind of that turning point for some people as to whether this movie will be a film that you enjoy more than the original film, or if you're kind of like, man, I just don't know that we needed this. Not that it's bad, I just don't know that we needed this. Because you can go, oh, that's really cool, and we're doing Nightmare on Elm Street stuff, and there's sequences that go along with that with practical effects, and it looks really cool. It's exciting, it's different. There's a lot of creativity in the way that the dream sequences are portrayed using like grainy 8mm film, and there's just a very specific aesthetic and vibe to them. And so just a lot of really nice artistic flourishes that kind of take place. And like I said, it's just because it is a bigger story that isn't constrained to this boy locked in a room, there's all this other stuff you can do. There's more tools at Scott Derrickson's disposal for thrills, scares, and just telling a grander story. Flip side, exactly what I enjoyed about the original one was that it was very contained. I like little survival stories, and essentially it's just a kid trying to survive, and there's this supernatural spice on top of it that gives him certain abilities to try and be able to work around and escape what's going on. versus the new one that, Scott Derrickson in the interviews afterwards talked about how Dream Warriors is his favorite of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. There's a lot of Dream Warriors in this film. It's not just Freddy Krueger, it's Dream Warriors type stuff of fighting back in this other realm. And so it's such a big departure. And if you are excited for that, if you go, yeah, do something very different, and you thought maybe the first was too small, too restrictive, that's exactly what you want. Those restrictions are exactly what I enjoyed about the first film. And it's such a different experience that you don't want your sequel to just rehash the original one, but you want it to feel familiar with, like it doesn't feel like we're departing too far. And like I said, for me, when you have this whole grand canvas of a whole camp and telling stories with back lore and all these other characters, it's not really, it's a totally different experience from the original film. And so that doesn't make it bad. I just loved what we did in the first movie more. Today's video is brought to you by HelloFresh. Fall is almost here. That means cooler nights, craving heartier meals, and wanting something warm and satisfying. This season, HelloFresh has had a massive upgrade with their biggest menu yet. HelloFresh has doubled their menu. That means you can choose from 100 options each week. Likewise, you can feel great because their menu is even healthier with high protein and veggie-packed recipes. Here's the part that I love. You can get steak and seafood delivered to your door every week, no extra cost. There's 3 times more seafood on the menu now at no extra cost. I'm not a cook, not a chef. They deliver the exact ingredients in the right proportions with clear directions on how to make these delicious meals. Therefore, even someone like me that does not know what they're doing is able to cook an amazing meal. The best way to cook just got better. Go to HelloFresh.com/SeanChandler10FM now to get 10 free meals plus a free item for life. 1 per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. That's HelloFresh.com/SeanChandler10FM to get 10 free meals plus free item for life. Speaking of some of those big changes in the second film, the sister kind of gets promoted. She's probably a little bit more the star in this film versus the brother. And each of them, you're kind of looking at their different reactions to the events of the first film, where they are several years later, and how they're reacting to realizing that they have some sort of connection to the dead and what they do with that. And this kind of puts the sister in kind of this, like I said, that Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Warrior sort of situation of trying to unravel this grand mystery. It's a movie filled with like mysteries, questions, the past. How does all these things that happened at this camp decades ago tie into everything that's going on in the present? And so we're a bit of an investigation, and the sister is more the one driving all of this. And so once again, just kind of a little shift in your flavors, your perspective of the story, the nature of the story. It's all just a little bit different, which you want to do that with a sequel, but you don't want to go too far with it. And once again, how much you prefer the mystery, the grander story, the scope, the size, the Nightmare on Elm Street, the expanded lore backstory, how much mileage you get out of that will determine how much fun you have with this film and how much you prefer it or don't prefer it over the original. One of the things that Scott Derrickson does a great job with both films is being able to have like really strong emotional arcs for our characters, and them kind of coming to grips with their past, their family, their failures, their future, their trauma. And that's present once again in this film. The dad, I didn't feel like they had as much for him to do in this film. I was kind of disappointed by that in light of, I felt they did some really cool things with him in the first film, and he's just kind of a tag along here. But the movie still has a lot of just deep, very familial emotions, primal emotions kind of inside of it that kind of in particular swells as you move into the third act of the film. And just all along the way, I think, Scott Derrickson is just very good with this genre. And so having a larger scope to paint on, or canvas to paint on, gives him just more opportunities for just fun visuals, crazy practical effects, dream sequences, all these sorts of things, just more room to play around with. And all done really, really well, because he's so good at this. I will say the role of the grabber is a little bit more complicated in the film, where it was just, in the original one, obviously kidnaps a kid, has him in his basement. There's this constant back and forth of it being tormented, just the creepiness. Whereas here, it becomes this more supernatural being. So he's not as present in the film. And when he is, it is more kind of this demonic version of him. And so it's not quite as effective. Like, he gets the cool, freaky stuff in certain sequences, but not as present in the movie, not as strong of a presence in the movie. And so I feel like maybe there could have been more of him. And if you're going to go for the dream sequence stuff, I think that needed to be more prominent in the film. Like, if you're going to go there and you go, that was cool, oh, that's what this is going to be. And it felt like we needed at least a couple more of these dream sequences and playing out the little bit of the fun of that more. And it's one thing that to me was just an overall negative. The movie doesn't just build out the supernatural lore in the world of these kids have powers, so how else could that play out in tying to mysteries of lost children and things like that? It also does kind of like, try not to say too much, but it's diving into the past more in ways that things get retconned a little bit, and too many connections are made in a way that makes the universe feel small rather than bigger. That you're telling a grander story, we're going to the past, we're looking at all these details, we're exploring a camp, but when you make too many connections, it makes things smaller rather than bigger. And so I a little bit of the let's look in the past and see where all this came from is good. I think this one went way too far into all of that. That just it answered questions or changed details by going backwards, and that diminished the overall effectiveness of both films for me. But as I've said kind of all along the way in here, while I have a lot of these negatives, and when discussing it, I gravitate towards all the ways in which it negatively compares to the original, none of that is to say that it's bad. None of that is to say that I didn't enjoy the individual sequences, scenes, arcs, visuals, creative flourishes. I did. And that's kind of sometimes where it's tricky, where you have a sequel that feels like kind of such a departure from the original one that all you kind of do is compare the two and you go, it's not as good. And so everything is kind of negative language, but not because everything about it is bad. So it's a little bit tough to explain. And perhaps it's as simple as, to me, it feels like some people that are really good at their jobs, doing the best they can, telling a second story where there wasn't really a second story to tell. And so they find all of the little details that you can take and build something around and expand it bigger. We just didn't need to do that. It doesn't mean it's bad. It just didn't feel necessary. So yeah, it's a movie that I think it's a good movie. It's just not as good of a movie. And I think it lost a lot of the distinctives, the tightness that I really enjoyed about the original film. As I said before, coming out of the theater, people had all kinds of different opinions from me. Handful of people were right there with me with what I was saying, but a lot of people loved this movie. Here's what they had to say.
I liked it a lot more than the first.
I really enjoyed it.
I thought it was just okay.
I had a come to Jesus moment.
I really enjoyed it.
Batshit crazy.
I loved it.
I loved it. For one reason alone, the emotional beats.
I thought it was just okay.
Absurd and insane.
I was in shock by how emotional it was.
I wouldn't say it's as good as the first one.
I very much enjoyed it.
And this is probably one of my new all-time favorite movies.
The stylistic choices in the dream sequences were cool. The new lore added on was nice.
I absolutely loved it.
Black Phone 1 is one of my all-time favorites. And this just takes a completely different approach.
I loved it.
I actually thought it was good.
I feel like it was more the sister story this time around. And it's an absolute fucking banger.
A lot of things I need to sit on it to kind of feel how I really land on it.
I absolutely love the Black Phone.
All right, we're done.
That's what almost everyone else is saying.
Real quick, before I give you my final thoughts, be sure to let me know what you thought about the movie down below in the comment section. Also, I was able to interview Scott Derrickson earlier this year for his movie The Gorge, and we talked through kind of his whole filmography. So if you're a Scott Derrickson fan, you should check out that interview. It's just kind of like great to just kind of pick his brain on how he crafts horror, how he selects music for his films, and all the different ways that he thinks about movies, themes, all of that fun stuff. It was a great, enlightening conversation. As someone that loved The Black Phone, I liked Black Phone 2. I thought the original one was this great, isolated survival thriller with a supernatural spice sprinkled on top of it. And the sequel doubles down on that spice and makes it all about the supernatural, which leads to some very cool sequences. There's definitely some solid emotional arcs in here, memorable images that stick in your brain. But overall, I didn't think it was as effective as a film because it's a story that I don't think needed to be told. Overall, it's a B on the entertainment scale, 7 out of 10, and it's worth seeing, but at matinee prices. Remember, I did an interview with Scott Derrickson. You can check that out right over there. Great long conversation. He's really easy to talk to and just shares such great little insights on how he thinks about movies. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.